Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Ed, so much for being here. We're really grateful. You're not just dedicating your day, you're also dedicating your evening. I imagine everyone in the room knows that Ed will receive our John Wooden Global Leadership Award tonight. He's a tremendous honoree. As many of you know, our school hopes to develop transformative leaders. These are leaders who can solve complex business problems, but as well catalyze action in organizations, lead ethically and purposefully. And you are the model transformative leader. And I think we're all going to learn more about that in the next hour. I have some questions that I prepared. And then we have some questions from students that were submitted earlier. And then we'll have some time towards the end for questions from the audience. So if that's okay with you, why don't we get started? Yeah.
First of all, thank you for inviting me. I look forward to spending the day here. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, it's our honor. So you're going to be awarded, I mentioned tonight, the John Wooden Global Leadership Award in recognition of your values-based leadership. So can you share a bit about your values, the most important ones to you as a leader, and how those values shaped and influenced your leadership style?
Well, values are, the basis around which our entire business model operates. People tend to think about the values as being the soft spot of business, and that's kind of a nice to have. But it really is the glue that holds a company, holds the fabric of what you do together for your people, for your customers, for your community, for your shareholders. And in today's society, that's never been more important with all the divisiveness and the challenges that we see on whether it's a geopolitical frame, you mentioned climate, all the challenges that are coming at the world that need answers. Businesses are there to solve. Now, we can't fix everything, but we can be part of the solution, just as you are here with the school leading this great student body through those challenging times. At Delta, our values are very much around people. It's a people-centric, people-first agenda at all times. Our brand is our people. People tend to think about airlines as these big planes to all these exotic destinations using fancy technologies and high capital investment and challenging dynamics. We've got all of that, but at the heart of it is how do you differentiate yourself from all the other airlines who have all those same opportunities and so all those same challenges as you have. Mm-hmm. To me, it's always about people, putting your people in a position to win, having their trust, making sure they know you have their back. Their judgment is one that we develop together. And as a result of that, people have increasingly come to a preference for Delta. Delta's brand stands for welcoming, elevated, and caring experiences delivered by the world's best aviation professionals. And that's something you work on every single day. And it's the values underneath that propel that vision forward.
That's wonderful. I imagine in the last couple of years post-COVID that this focus on sort of employee first and customer and real focus on the customer must be a real differentiator. We hear a lot about disaffection among employees in the airline industry, as well as among customers. Tell us a little bit how your value-based principles have really differentiated Delta in just, say, the last couple of years.
Well, you're right, Tony. In the last couple of years, it has allowed us to take it to a different level, but it's always been at the heart of what we've done. Delta is almost a 100-year-old company. We turn 100 next year. It's our centennial. I'm real excited to celebrate that. And our founder had a very simple expression and saying upon which he founded Delta, is that if you take care of your people will take care of your customers, who will then reward the shareholders of their loyalty and the reinvestment that comes back. And so that's the virtuous circle that we tend to promote. And again, I think most companies, especially in this day and age, say that. And it's really easy to say that, but really hard to do. Are you really focused first on your people? Truly? Do you really think the first thing in the morning about what your people are going through? Or do you focus on what your customers want? Because we also live in a consumer business, people say you need to be customer obsessed. And the way we approach that is I, as a leader, and my leadership team are employee obsessed so that they can be customer obsessed. It has to go in that direction, because if the employees don't feel the love, how are the customers ever going to sense that from you? And how do you deliver that consistently 5,000 flights a day, 200 million times a year, with a workforce of 100,000, right? So that has to have already been there, and it's already been part of the culture for years and years. Now it's been harmed, and the challenges of 9/11, bankruptcy, COVID, everything else is kind of threatened and put that, made you a little vulnerable around that. But that's always been at the core. Now, getting back to your question on COVID was a time where, obviously we didn't see it coming. There was no playbook. There was no preparation. It was real time. It hit you right between the eyes immediately. And it didn't matter where you were in society, or home or school or church, whatever you did, you had to deal with massive change brought in a disruptive fashion. What I chose to do at Delta was to focus again back on people, saying our job during COVID was to make sure we protected our people, first and foremost. Whatever it took, we had to protect them. That meant, by the way, I said in the first couple of weeks of COVID, which I knew at the time it sounded crazy and probably not possible to do. I said a goal is we're not going to furlough any employees. How many companies we did not furlough a single employee at Delta. We have 100,000 people. We did not furlough a single employee. And we set that as a goal right at the onset. And we didn't quite know how we were going to do that. And it took an awful lot of creativity to get there, but we got there. We said that our goal was to make sure we protected our customers and everything that we can do to help them restill the confidence back and coming out and flying again into the public. And many, many, many things we did, one of which that got the most amount of attention was we were the first and the longest lasting to block the middle seats. For a year and a half, we did not sell. Even though it was safe to sit in the middle seat, we knew customers didn't want to sit in the middle seat. And we blocked those middle seats for a year and a half. And most of the airlines did not block them, and those that did were forced to because we were doing it and gave up on it shortly thereafter because we were all under a challenge to generate revenue. My philosophy is if you put people first, your people didn't want to work in a crowded aircraft any more than your customers wanted to sit in a crowded aircraft. So it was a people first policy that then led to great customer loyalty. Customers still to this day come and thank me for that. And the secret in all of that was customers were so willing to fly Delta at that point, and even higher level than ever before. We generated more revenue per plane than our competition did, while they were selling all the seats and we were only selling 2/3 of the seats. People were paying that much more to be on Delta because of it. So when you do the right thing, it also happens to be, the smart team thing. So, and there's many other things in there around well-being and how we've protected our people, both from the vaccine deployment and medical officer that we brought in from the Mayo, to our cleanliness, to financial security and emotional security, just the whole well-being aspect that COVID gave us a bigger platform to which to operate.
Yeah. That's great. We'll talk a little bit more about this. I think it's absolutely fascinating. When I think about the industries that had biggest transformations during COVID, obviously going through the pivots that we had to in higher education were pretty challenging, but it's hard to think of an industry that had more challenges than the airline industry. We'll talk about that in a bit, but I want to, back to, kind of the employee first ethos. In 2007, you started something unique in the airline industry, employee profit sharing. And this last Valentine's Day,
last week,
you gave a much better Valentine's Day present than I did to my wife. She's still complaining. But you awarded your employees $1.4 billion in profit share last week. And tell us the thinking behind the program and how you think it's benefited the company.
So this is a program that we've had in place for almost 20 years. And it was born out of crisis. Delta, after 9/11, like many of the airlines did, went into a tailspin. And many of us wound up filing for bankruptcy protection and having to go through a massive restructuring. We had a lot of people that took pretty big pay cuts. At that point in time, 20 years ago, there were jobs lost. There were some significant layoffs. And it was a really hard time deal for us. We were losing a lot of money. Employees were unhappy. Customers were unhappy. Questions whether the business was even going to make it were on the table, which today it seems hard to think about back then. And one of the things that I did as I was leading the restructuring is I went to our people and said, I realized that, and by the way, when I say pay cuts, I mean pay cuts. Our people took 40 to 50% pay cuts, 40 to 50%. And we have a lot of two-earner families where both a husband and wife work and so the whole household was under major duress during this time. And I obviously we were very apologetic. And there are two things that I wanted our people to know during that time. First of all, that it wasn't their fault, that we didn't go through bankruptcy by making a lot of smart decisions. The company had let them down. Because anytime you go through a hard time, it's very easy for companies to make it feel like it's their employees' fault somehow, or they feel the burden of that. They're not productive enough. They're not agile enough. There's too many of them. They're paid too much. They're not delivering on the customer. So whatever the case was, it's not the employee's fault. It's the management's fault that set up a system that enabled the employees to fail. And letting the employees know, first of all, that we were sorry and it was not their fault. It was the management needing to take responsibility. And when we got it back, and I was confident we would figure out how to get it back, they would get the first returns, the first fruits of those rewards. And we set up a plan it's more complicated than this, but in essence, it turns out to be about 15% of the profits of our company go to our employees first. Not the management, not the senior leaders don't get any of that, the employees. And by the way, if we're not profitable and we don't pay profit sharing, the leadership team doesn't get paid anything. No bonuses, no nothing, as it should be. And in that era, it was kind of easy to say because we were losing money. People didn't really think too hard about it because that sounds nice, but I'm not sure it was well, the first payment was in 2007. I think we paid, I don't know, 300 million. I'm making it up. It's in that order, which is a lot of money. And they were surprised and they were happy. And then we kept building and kept growing and kept investing. COVID hit, then it kind of fell again. And the last couple of years, we weren't able to pay anything. But now that we're back again and at the level of profitability approaching where it should be, we paid $1.4 billion to our people. It was about 5 weeks. Yes, thank you. So it was about five weeks worth of pay. Our people never know if it's coming or not. I mean, they're always asking all year long, what's it going to be? Are we going to get any? And to get a check for close to almost 11% on that day, it makes for a very happy Valentine's Day. And of course, we also celebrate it proudly. We had a surprise pop-up live concert by Ludacris on our ramp in Atlanta. As the planes were going by, people were looking at what's going on there, and people were dancing. I don't think we did too well with our bag performance that day, but the people are happy. They feel like the alignment that we talk about with stakeholders is perfect because they only get paid that profit sharing if we're successful. And so their biggest question is always, how do we make it bigger? How do we get more next year? How do we we do it by being smarter as to how we work, using technology, using the customer satisfaction toolkits, the service level investments that we're making to make it even better. So it's another one of those full circle moments.
Yeah, wonderful. So you've already mentioned a number of challenges that you've guided Delta through: bankruptcy, a hostile takeover attempt, 9/11, the pandemic, and I know you created a documentary, "The Steepest Climb," that shares your resilience from these crises. What are the kind of the fundamental lessons that you've learned navigating all these different crises? Are there threads here that our students should be aware of?
Yeah, there certainly are threads. And they gave me the confidence as a leader when COVID hit. That was the granddaddy of all of those crises. It kind of was all wrapped into one. The confidence to know we were going to get through. There were two things that I think great leaders did during COVID. One, they acknowledged the depth of what they were going through, how hard it was, how hard it was going to be, what it was going to take to kind of navigate that with so much uncertainty and kind of walking every day through to gradually to be dealing with conflicting advice and counsel and news reports and medical counsel, whatever, kind of navigating through that. With Tony and I were talking before this. I mean, COVID was just a crazy time. It felt like it was a true out-of-body experience. And even though it was only a few years ago, it seems like it was a few lifetimes ago. Mm-hmm. It was so weird to happen to us, but you had to walk through it and make sure that the gravity was appreciated, so everyone would do whatever they had to do to kind of hold together to get through it. But you can never lose the confidence you're going to get there. That optimism, and it's not guarded optimism. It's full on. We're going to get through this. Mm-hmm. And people would ask me, "How do I know?" And I said, "Because I know." And we're going to continue to, and we're going to do it together. And Jim Collins, I'm a big disciple of Jim Collins, and Good to Great fame, and he's a friend, and he's done a lot of work at Delta with me. He talks about it as the Stockdale paradox, where at the one hand, you're at the bottom, and you don't really know what's going to come next, but you're going to get through, and never losing hope. Being grounded in reality, but never losing hope is what gave it that. And since I had managed through a number of different challenges in our industry, that I knew the culture and the service ethic of our people, I knew the world needed to travel. I knew the situation of lockdown was not sustainable. And I knew that when people were able to travel again, just as you've all seen, it's been a jailbreak. Everyone goes, everyone tries to get out. And by the way, the demand today is stronger than it's ever been in the airline industry's history, because people never, ever want to get back into that situation where their freedoms were taken from them, and their ability to actually explore, experience, and be together. Losing that connection was just so vital to the human spirit. So it's that combination of knowing you're going to get there for those reasons, but also understanding the gravity. Because it wasn't like we were losing, not making any money because people weren't traveling. We were actually losing $100 million a day in cash. Wow. 100 million in cash, because not only did we have no cash coming in, we also, this is a business where people put deposits down in advance and people want to travel. And when COVID hit in February and March, that was really our prime booking season for the coming spring and summer season. So we were having to give back an awful lot of refund money to customers at the same time, and pay people and pay your other bills as they were coming due. So for a period of about 90 days, we were losing 100 million a day. And if you're counting, that's close to $10 billion in 3 months. And that's scary. That's scary.
And it makes the decisions you made more remarkable, because you mentioned earlier you didn't furlough any staff. Mm-hmm. You're hemorrhaging money. Mm-hmm. And yet, I guess it comes back to that optimism. You made bets that I don't think many people thought would pay off. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about, how now the sort of the employee first ethos crashes into shareholder value maximization and making the argument to your board, to your biggest investors, this is the right thing to do.
Yeah. Well, I didn't need to convince my board. My board understood who I was, who we were. So they were along. And then I was keeping my board posted. We had calls 3 times a week, meetings, every week. Just continued to understand where we needed to get through. But I'll give a perfect example of how the people rose to the occasion to ensure the safety of the company for the long haul. I mentioned we didn't furlough anyone. One of the ways in which we didn't furlough anybody is I went personally to all of our employees, and we used all the video tools, all the technologies that we had embedded. We weren't using Zoom. We had our own Delta Internet, SkyHub, we call it, where people were using it previous to COVID, which was a blessing that we had that tool, to be able to talk to them, for them to be able to see me as often as it took, sometimes several times a day, just letting them know where we are in the journey and kind of really bringing them along so they were really built in and had a vested interest in this. And I said to them, I said, I had this vision that we weren't going to furlough anyone. I don't know how we're going to do that, but we're all going to have to figure this out together. And one thing I went to them, I said, if anyone would consider taking unpaid leaves of absence, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Now, COVID hit March of 2020, full on. In February of 2020, what happened? Well, that was Valentine's Day. And we had another big profit sharing payout because we always pay it on Valentine's Day. We paid $1.6 billion to our people. So our people had money that we had just invested in them. At that point, that was the largest ever. That was close to 18% of their pay. And I said, we'll keep your benefits in place. I'll give you travel privileges. But if you're interested in not coming in and not getting a paycheck so that you can save the job of younger people who can't afford to step aside, would you please do that for us? I had over half the company, over 50,000 people that took me up on that offer, many of whom for up to 2 years with no pay. They kept their job, they kept their benefits. And so we immediately reduced the size of our company in half overnight.
Wow.
By doing that, by taking care of your people always and first, and people giving their thanks back and their appreciation back. And so that was a perfect way in which, taking care of your people actually is not just the right thing, it's the smart thing to do.
That's terrific. So, here at Anderson, we're really focused on the intersection of technology and key industries, and how technology is really a fundamental driver of the evolution of industries. We're also focusing heavily on data. And you mentioned, Juhi mentioned, at the beginning, how we also want to be part of the solution to large societal problems, particularly around climate. Yeah. So can you tell us how you're investing in data management, technology, and clean technologies in particular to benefit your company, your customers, but also society broadly?
Yeah. Well, technology is, our people are the lifeblood to our company, but it's technology that powers them to get the jobs done. And that's what's leading the advances that we have in terms of as we're continuing to expand our leadership within the airline industry. When you think about today's consumer, all of you hopefully are loyal Delta flyers, and if you're not, hopefully you'll be at the end of this. And the power of that app. You got the app in your hand, it gives you all the information, and it's getting better, and it needs to continue to get better. Putting the power in your customer's hand to take control of the travel experience. The one thing that you mentioned earlier, Tony, is that people feel in our industry, a lot of things are outside of one's control. Mm-hmm. And the customers, by the way, feel that same way too. Is, if the plane isn't taking off on time, if there's a mechanical or, we can't find their bags. We never lose your bags. We just misplace them. We always get them. Sometimes it takes a little longer than you'd like. I apologize. But putting power of technology in the hands of consumers is actually not just giving them more control of their experience. It actually is a fiercely important brand building loyalty preference, because when people start to learn how to use the app, they tend to like the app, they tend to build their schedule, their preferences, their choices around that app. And we want to continue to make it better, to put that power in their hands so that the first time they see a Delta employee is maybe when they're sitting on the cabin and they're interacting with a flight attendant. And that's it. And by the way, we love all of our people interacting with all of our customers all the time, but a lot of times people just want to be able to manage their experience. That's a perfect way in which we do that. You look at what we're doing in the airports with the investment in technology. Look at how we've completely transformed LAX and that experience from what it was to what it is today, and where's it going, which we're not going to stop in the future. Technology sits at the core of that. When you think about our operational reliability, what customers want more than anything is they want a highly reliable, on-time, scheduled delivery. And Delta every year wins the award as the most on-time, most reliable airline in the world. And why is that? Because we use technology to enable that. We use predictive engine technologies. We use predictive modeling techniques. It's not just our people work harder, our people work smarter by putting the power of the information, knowing where the planes are, what we have to do to make certain that we're delivering our on-time reliability. So technology just cuts right across the theme. In fact, I'll remember the first time COVID started to become the last normal thing I did before COVID hit was January of 2020, sort of normal. I was the keynote speaker, the lead speaker for the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas in January of 2020. The first time an airline ever led the entire conference, hundreds of thousands of people from around the world wanting to see where consumer technologies and the advent of change was coming. And they chose an airline to lead that off, talking about the future of travel. We've implemented many of those technologies actually by using downtime that we had during COVID to work on the things to get them up, including now free Wi-Fi that's fast, that works, that's high caliber, and it's going to continue to get better for keeping our customers engaged and connected during their journey while they're in the air, just not just when they're on the ground.
Well, here's something that might surprise you. It surprised me. Delta is now the nation's #5 e-commerce retailer, behind Amazon, Walmart, eBay, and Apple. I found that remarkable. Can you share with us your e-commerce strategy?
Well, it evolves from what we were talking about. 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 20% of our tickets were bought online. You had Expedia, you had Priceline, you had cheaptickets.com, you had all these different places where people could go for fares and kind of sort and find the airfare or choice for the airline they wanted to fly on. We went at that hard and we said, well, consumers should come first to Delta. And we should have the trust and confidence to know that they're going to get the best price, they're going to get the best guarantees, they're going to get the best service, and we can build more of a personalized connection to them by having their information than some ticket broker on the side could ever look to build. And we invested heavily in our online booking tools. Now over 50% of our tickets get sold through our channels, not some. We'll cut out the middleman. And as a result of that, our consumers are actually enjoying their experience, engaging their experience a lot more. And as a result of that, our revenues on an annual basis, over online, I think are over $30 billion a year, and which kind of puts us in some rarefied air. In which we say, now we're not Amazon, we're not Walmart, but as online merchants go, we're right near the top.
Yeah, incredible. I'm going to take some questions from students that were prepared earlier, and then we'll have a few minutes for questions from the audience. So one of our students asked, what progress has been made on alternative fuels and ways to make the industry more sustainable?
Yeah. A really, really good question. And when I think about the threats to our industry over time, that is the existential threat to our industry, because our imprint on climate and the environment, 98% of it is from jet fuel. Yes, we use a lot of other products and plastics and everything else that we're working on, but jet fuel is classified as a hard to abate fuel because we don't have a replacement for jet fuel. There are some sustainable aviation products out there. There's some out here in California that have been developed, but the cost of those bioproducts per gallon are about 4 times the cost of what a gallon of jet fuel costs. So a gallon of jet fuel today is around $3 a gallon. Those products cost over $10 a gallon to use. And so it's just not commercially feasible for us to be spending that much more in order to be able to say that we're working on our step. We do, but it's not, doesn't give a platform for success. So we're working hard with lots and lots of constituents in this. And in fact, we've got a great project that we're doing in Minneapolis. We've got a very large hub. It's one of the largest hubs we fly is out of Minneapolis. We've got a state government that's very like-minded, that provides tax incentives to use sustainable aviation fuels. There are some federal remedies as well. We have an energy company in Minneapolis called Xcel Energy. We've got Ecolab, which is headquartered there. We've got actually a refinery that's right near the hub itself that's willing to invest in a $1 billion renewable facility to create blending. And we got massive feedstock, in the heartland, up in the central, north central part of our country that we can start to import. Because one of the problems with sustainable and biofuels is they don't transport. We have pipelines in our country that take jet fuel wherever you want to take it. or take fuels wherever you want to take it. You can't transport ethanol. It's just not, there's not the storage, there's not the transport facilities. So you actually have to pretty much consume pretty close to where you're using. And we have a goal, bringing all those parties together, that we could actually have 50%, 50, of our total fuel needs in Minneapolis met by sustainable products over the next decade, which terrific. Is huge.
Yeah.
Today, if Delta was to go out and procure all the sustainable aviation fuel that's produced in our country, it's not enough for us to fuel our planes even for one day. That shows the magnitude of where we need to go. So this is something we're working on, and clean technologies are important. But we got to get all of the constituents. We need government, we need the energy companies, we need private capital to come in to solve this. So we're going to need as many smart people thinking about these, so that all of you can be traveling. Because the alternative, say the existential threat, is we don't travel anymore. And we all saw what that was like a few years ago.
Another question from the students. With recent proposed mergers in the airline industry facing additional federal scrutiny, what are your thoughts on the activities of the FTC, excuse me, and what you see in terms of future M&A activity in the airline industry?
I don't see much M&A activity going on in the airline industry. We're big enough. Our country has 4 big airlines: Delta, Northwest, Delta, United, Southwest, and American. And we're all pretty much 20% of the market. And we're very competitive. We fight like brothers and sisters, almost trying to grab as many customers and share. And if you can't tell, I'm a pretty competitive guy myself. And we don't need a whole lot of M&A to help us. At the same time, we do have an administration that is, depending on your politics, either doing great support for consumers in terms of protecting them, or huge amount of overreach, and you got a little bit of both happening here, and you got a lot of bureaucracies in DC that want to just kind of regulate, because this industry 50 years ago was regulated. People don't realize that. Back in the 1970s, the governments controlled everything there were about airlines: where you flew, how much you charged, what markets you could serve, where you went, what planes you used. All had to be approved by a government-sanctioned body in DC, the Air Transport Board. And as a result of that, airfares were exorbitant. People couldn't afford to travel. I grew up. When I grew up, first time I ever stepped foot on an airplane is I was 25 years old. People said, "How did you get this job?" I said, "I don't know." I never even experienced, because we couldn't afford it. I was in a big family in upstate New York, and we all loaded, got on a station wagon, and drove places, and if we wanted to go somewhere. And so that's the other side of it, is that the democratization of air travel, and getting the government out of the middle and actually bringing fares way down. Fares on an inflation-adjusted basis are over 50% cheaper to fly today than they were then. And when you think about the earning power and the ability for people to want to go places, that wasn't possible. And you think about how travel has changed our world. And it's just here in the school. How many students have you been able to bring on campus from all different countries, much less states in our country, that want to get the experience here? That's because airfare, makes that possible. People can afford to engage and do that experience. You didn't do that 50 years ago.
Yeah. One more question before we go to the audience. What's changed most about your role since you took it on, and how have you adjusted to it? The CEO job is, I'm sure there's people in the room here wanting to be a CEO someday, and it's cool. There's some good things that comes with it. It's hard. There's not a day that doesn't go by that I scratch my head about some new problem I'm finding out about. But it's also incredibly rewarding. It's the coolest thing I've ever had a chance to do. And coming here and speaking, I do a lot of public events and get a lot of opportunity to both present our brand and what we stand for, but also hear from people as to what we can do to make the transportation world a better place and an easier place in which to navigate. I think one of the things that I've had to get comfortable since becoming CEO 8 years ago is being a public person.
is being the face of a brand. I mean, our brand is, when you're on that airplane and, you fly Delta, you see me on the screen, and I'll wave to you next time. I'll say hello. I'm not used to that. I mean, I was a financial guy growing up, and I was a numbers guy, and I didn't have that in me. I'll tell you a funny story. About 10 years ago, I took my 2 daughters on a trip to Hawaii. We were in Maui, and I was letting them know, it was just a father-daughter thing. I was letting them know that I was going to be named CEO that coming January or February. And my older daughter thought, that's really cool. That's exciting. They both thought it was cool and exciting, and we had fun talking about what that was going to mean. And I said, one thing is, I'm not going to be able to be, I'm going to be probably a little more public, a little less private. And by the way, it's going to impact you whether you know it or not in your life. And so they didn't really understand what that meant. So we're flying back from Hawaii, and I'm sitting next to my youngest. And at that time, she was probably 10 years old. She's 20 now, so she'd be about 10 right now. And the screen comes on, and it's the CEO of Delta, who was my predecessor, came on the screen, welcoming everyone to Delta. And it hits my daughter. She looks at me. She has this grief look in her face. She said, "Dad." And I said, "What?" She said, "Dad." She kept saying "Dad" like 5 times in a row. I was like, "Okay, what happened?" And she said, "That you can't do that." "No, you can't do that." And I said, "Well," she said, "Well, that's good enough. There doesn't need to be another. That's fine." They said, "Why do you have to do it? That's fine. They should just leave what they have. It's cheaper. Just let them do it." And I said, "Well, they're probably going to make me do it." And she said, "No, you can't. No, you can't." And I said, "Well, why are you so upset?" She said, "Well, next spring, my class is going to Washington, D.C., and all our classes already talked about we're going to take Delta and whatnot, and I'd be so embarrassed to have my father on the screen, and I just can't even think about that."
That's great.
So that's what life of the CEO is like. Today, she thoroughly loves it. She's a junior at University of Georgia, and she's having a great time. And she loves the opportunities that this job creates.
Great. I love that. So we have some time for questions from the audience. We have a couple of microphones. If you don't mind, if you could speak into the microphone and briefly introduce yourself and which program you're in, or if you're a staff or faculty, just briefly introduce yourself.
I'm curious if there is something from a business perspective that you wish you made a different decision on throughout your career, and how that changed your perspective or approach to leadership or running the company.
Oh, I have lots of things I learn every day about what I could do better, what we can do better as a company. I'm a huge believer that you need to learn from experience, failure. I love a saying that Coach Wooden said. Success is only as good as what you're doing today. Success isn't guaranteed for anyone. Failure isn't fatal. Failure gives you an opportunity to succeed. And the thing that really counts in all that is courage. Courage. And that means having the courage of your convictions to continue to do better when something doesn't go right. The courage to make certain that when you're successful, you're not so full of yourself that you wind up losing your humility and wind up actually letting others surpass you. Realizing your success is only as good as today. Another one I was saying, I'm a huge fan of Coach Wooden's. I was reading some on his life and some of his Wooden, I guess they were called his clips, is that, don't spend a lot of today talking about yesterday. You focus on today and tomorrow. Don't focus on yesterday. That's how you learn from failures and experiences. And we had a classic one just a few months ago. We made some changes to our loyalty program that were not well received. And I was nervous about it at the time as to how we were approaching it. And when I started learning quickly about what the reactions were, I almost immediately publicly said, we're not doing that. We're gonna go a course correction. We're gonna make changes. Some changes we had to make because we had so many premium customers wanting a limited amount of premium assets. But we need to make certain that we're seen as an airline that rewards everyone for the experience they have on Delta. So I get a lot of feedback all the time. I'll tell you another one of those stories. My phone here. This changes your life also. Not always
not
to the
in a
good.
good way. Yeah.
Not always to the good, but to me it's very good. When I became CEO, my predecessor told me that one of the things you're going to have to do is that you already are too public, and you got to go find a private email. You got to change your email identity so people can't locate you. You got to change your phone number. You've got to kind of take almost this pride to be able to preserve your privacy, or else you're just going to be bombarded with whatever's happening. And I said, thank you very much. I didn't do that. I want it to be available to people. I want customers to email me when there's questions. I want our people to email me when there's a problem, a local problem, a big, whatever they see. And every day I get thousands of emails a day, and I see all of them. They all come here. It doesn't mean I can deal with them personally. I'd be kind of hiding in a cave, dealing with it all if I had to. But I got a great team of people, including a couple of my staff here, Alexis and Savannah, that help, and they make certain that we deliver and we actually get opportunities for people. And so when everybody knows that they can reach their CEO, 100,000 people know that directly, and they'll hear back from me quickly on that. Not like a week later. It's like many times it's like 5 minutes later. I mean, people say, wow, okay. And by the way, customers have that same reaction. People in the community have that same reaction. And it allows me to feel like I'm connected every day to it. But I've got a system that stands behind me that actually helps me deliver that kind of service. That's what learning's about.
My question is, what are your biggest pain points being competitive with the other legacy carriers?
Yeah, well, we're, as I said, we're an extremely competitive industry, and we all spend a lot of time because we want as much share. The thing about it that's true in our industry is that market share is hard fought, and every day a customer decides whether they're going to be on your product or not. But the investment it takes to get that customer is decades long in terms of the airplanes we have to buy, the facility, to redo LAX, we spent $2 billion. $2 billion over the last 5 years. The time we didn't have money with COVID going on. We got that done because of that. We're making big investments, big bets into the future. And having that kind of with the individual market share battles that you're facing, those are where the conflicts occur. But if you think about this business, you think for the long run, think about doing the right thing over time. You think about making the investments for the right reasons over time. I have confidence our team's going to deliver because we have the best people. There's a lot of things in this industry that we all have the same. We fly to many of the same destinations. We use many of the same aircraft. We all get our fuel from the same places. There's only one thing that separates airlines. It's the people, because they can't replicate our culture, and I'm not going to let them.
Well, we're going to stop here. First, thank you all for attending. Ed, thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate that.